This is Financially Fit Radio with Cory Sickles from Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors. Retirement isn't just about saving, it's about having a strategy that helps you navigate market ups and downs, combat inflation, and secure the future you deserve. That's why Financially Fit Radio is here to tackle your biggest financial concerns, share actionable strategies, and help you move toward your retirement goals with confidence. And now, here's Financially Fit Radio with Cory Sickles.
Welcome back to another episode of Financially Fit Radio. I'm Cory Sickles with Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors. If you'd like more information about anything we discuss on today's show, feel free to reach out to us by giving us a call at 614-760-0670, or you can always visit us online at safeharboroh.com. And while you're on our website, feel free to click on that radio page. You can check out today's show, past shows, and you can also subscribe to our podcast platforms such as Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, or Spotify. Also, feel free to watch videos on our YouTube channel. Just type in Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors. You can watch today's show, previous shows. We have a whole bunch of playlists. You can also subscribe and be kept up to date when we release some of our video shorts on different types of financial topics. You know, we're here to help and guide you to make sure that you have the best retirement that you possibly can. And the best way to do that is to set up a complimentary, no obligation meeting with us. Again, we're here to help and guide you to make sure you have the best retirement possible. Today, we're going to talk about how to foolproof your retirement portfolio. I think it'll be a great conversation, and we'll explain what we really mean by what does foolproof really mean. But before we dive into that, let me introduce you my co-host this week and every week, and that's Tony Shore. Tony, how are you today?
Oh, Cory, I am great. I've had an amazing week. I know I always say that, but the week was just, it was good. It was busy my past week, and I did get out in the heat and try to get some yard work done. Now it's cooling off and rainy again. We talked a little bit about that before the show, so we'll see what happens there. But I laid a lot of sod, which is actual work, I found out, and I'm actually happy it's raining because that means I can, I don't have to get out there and water it every 5 minutes. When you have new sod, you got to keep it wet. You need to keep it pretty soaked.
This is also a good time to make sure that you're actually mowing your grass a little bit higher as well.
Yes.
Just for the fact it doesn't burn out if we don't get any water. I know you got some today, but you know, I remember last July and August. I mean, we didn't see rain for months.
Yeah, same. And you have to keep it wet, and you might want to leave it a little higher. We got to cut just in time, just before the rain, so should be good. That'll be good here at least. So I know you've been busy. You've been doing some traveling, meeting with clients. You really keep busy. This summer has been a busy one so far for you, hasn't it?
It has been. Had a vacation, back in the office, going on another trip here next week, or I guess the middle of July there.
Sure.
It's actually with a lot of other grading advisors. So kind of looking forward to that.
Yep.
And then, I do got some travel planned in August and September as well. Some of it's business, some of it's personal, but we're busy here, at Safe Harbor. Summer months are usually our lightest months. A lot of people are traveling, doing things like that as well. So, but before you know it, Tony, it's already going to be fall. Football season's right around the corner. You're starting to hear about all that. So already, time flies. Sometimes days go slow, man. But I tell you right now, weeks and months and years go by quick.
Yeah, it does. I cannot believe we're already more than halfway through 2025. I mean, we're on the backside of the year already. And, talking about in a month and a half or less football. I mean, it's crazy how time flies. Yeah,
it is crazy.
Yep. Yeah, in about a month. So that is something else. When you stop to think about it, you go through life, you get busy. And then when you stop to think, wow, it's already mid-July. That's crazy. But you're right. And, that has to do with what we talk about each week here on the show, retirement. And we're going to get into that. But we have Joe waiting to come in, right?
Yeah, we have Joe on here. I think he's going to talk to us for a couple of minutes about Advantage plans versus supplement plans. How you doing, Joe?
Nice.
Hey, how is everybody?
We are
Good.
doing well. We are
Good.
doing good.
Good.
So,
So, yeah, I'll just go ahead and dive right into it.
Sure.
I think one of the questions I get asked the most, or a couple questions I get asked the most when somebody is starting, researching their options into Medicare is, what do I choose and what is it going to cost me? So really, when somebody's diving into that and they're coming, whether you're turning 65, you're aging into Medicare, or you're coming off of, employer coverage and you're retiring, choosing the right Medicare plan for yourself is really going to depend on your health needs, your budget, your location, and some personal preferences. But first, you got to kind of understand the different parts of Medicare. So we have the two main parts that almost everybody's going to have is going to be your Part A, which is your hospital insurance. And that's usually going to be premium free for somebody if they've paid into, the Medicare taxes or have enough credits essentially to qualify for that free Part A. And then you've got your Part B, which is your medical insurance, things that are covering like your doctor visits and outpatient care. Now that Part B is going to have a premium associated with it. Now that premium for 2025 starts at $185 a month, and it can go up from there depending on basically how much money you made over the last couple years. And then you get into two of the other main parts of Medicare, which is Part C, commonly known as your Medicare Advantage plans. Some of those plans will bundle your Part A and your Part B together, and then often include the next part that I'm going to talk about, which is Part D, which is your prescription drug coverage. The prescription drug coverage, depending on if it's in an Advantage plan or if you're looking at it separate, may or may not have premiums with it, but you're going to have that drug coverage built into a plan somehow, or have it individual one way or the other, because most people aren't going to want to go without prescription drug coverage. So with that too, you also have the option of what is referred to as Medigap or Medicare supplement. So Medigap or Medicare supplement is going to cover the out-of-pocket cost. It works with Part A. It doesn't work with Part C. And it's kind of, when I'm having these conversations with people, I'm really breaking it down to, do you want to pay now or do you want to pay later, essentially? Do you want to be able to budget your money, kind of know what your healthcare expenses are going to look like? But then the flip side to that is with the Medicare Advantage plans, they don't have premiums with them, or most of the ones that I show somebody don't have a premium with them. So you only pay once you start seeking, some services from a doctor or a hospital. But some of the other things you need to ask yourself is, or not so much ask yourself, but then I'm going to ask you is, where are you living? What's the zip code that your primary residence is going to be in? Because that's going to determine what type of plan you get, what the premiums are going to look like, what the benefits are built in those plans, because those plans are specific to your location. And then also, we're going to dive into your prescription drugs. We want to make sure that we're finding a plan that is going to keep as much money in your pocket when it comes to not only an Advantage plan or a Medigap plan, but also your prescription drugs. Obviously, the name of the game for me is, lowest price as possible. Sometimes paying more doesn't always mean better. And then one of the other big questions that somebody is asking me when they're trying to choose is not only what do I choose, but I still want to be able to see my doctors. And that's kind of a deciding factor for some people too, because nobody wants to change their doctors after you've been seeing that doctor for, 10, 15, 20 years. So it really comes down to, with original Medicare and Medicare supplements, or those Medigap options, there's no network with that. So any doctor that accepts Medicare is going to accept your coverage. Now, when you get into Medicare Advantage plans, often those plans are going to require you to stay in a network. So then that type of plan that you're potentially looking at, you want to make sure, or I'm going to help you make sure that your doctor is in network, any of your primary doctors, your specialists. That way it's going to keep those pockets, out, or those out-of-pocket costs as low as possible. But I think the big deciding factor for a lot of people after we've gone through all this and had a conversation and I've done my presentation with them is overall is what is your budget? With original Medicare and Medigap, you've got two premiums that are going to be associated with that. You're going to have your Part B premium plus your Medigap premium. With Medicare Advantage, most of the time you're only going to have your Part B premium. So I explain it to people is, do you want to pay now or do you want to pay later? And then I break down what that looks like and kind of do a deep dive depending on the situation with somebody. But choosing the right Medicare plan is, it can be stressful. I try to make it as simple as possible for you. And again, the name of the game is to try to keep as much money in your pocket as possible. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's what works best for that individual person.
Well, the one thing I would, say for our listeners and viewers out there basically is Medicare is complicated. We have someone here, Joe, can actually sit down with you, present to you, and make sure you make the best decision, whether you want to go to the Medicare Advantage or to the supplement side of it. So thanks for your input, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, Joe, good job there. Cory, let's jump into our topic for today.
Yep.
You said you wanted to talk about how to foolproof your portfolio or your retirement portfolio. How does that work?
Well, really, Tony, when we start talking about foolproof your retirement, really what we're talking about is you want to basically a secure, reliable, and a risk-resistant as possible plan, right? So that even means if the markets drop, inflation rises, or you have any expected costs that hit you, you're still financially stable, right? We know the market's going to go up and down.
Yeah.
However, your retirement portfolio shouldn't always do that. So everybody wants to sleep a little better at night knowing that your financial future is secure. So that's really what we're talking about, is how to foolproof it. I mean, to foolproof your retirement, Tony, doesn't happen by accident, right? Again, you got to plan, you got to protect it, and then you got to stay consistent with it. And really, for our listeners out there are unsure where you want to start, that's why you really want to work with an advisor that's going to be able to help you, find what your foolproof retirement plan is.
Yeah. Well, and that sounds great. So it does things like protect your savings, right?
Yep. So, yeah. So really what we're talking about too, Tony, is yes, protect your savings, right? Everyone's always worried about outliving their money. Yep. So you want some type of guaranteed income.
Yep.
Taxes, right? You want to minimize it. You don't want any surprises. You want to be able to no one wants to pay more than their fair share to the government. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about what's the best situation for you, for there as well. You have to always think about long-term care, health care expenses. Joe just talked about it. Yep. But what a lot of people don't realize, actually 25%, I was just looking at a survey, Tony, 25% of the people got wrong on how much Medicare is going to pay for your health care in retirement. And it's only basically about 2/3 of your healthcare cost.
Right. Which are astronomical to begin with.
Right.
If Medicare covers 2/3, that's great. But the third it doesn't cover.
That's exactly right.
And there are other costs. There's still premiums. There's still co-pays, even deductibles in some cases. And again, it doesn't cover everything like Joe was talking about. It doesn't cover hearing, vision, dental. So you need supplemental or gap plans or advantage plans. And you're either going to pay for those now or later or all throughout typically. And that adds up, doesn't it?
It does add up.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I think a lot of people also mistake, Tony, when we start talking about the healthcare side of it, is a lot of people think Medicare is going to actually pay for long-term care if something does happen to you.
Yeah.
And really the only thing that's going to pay for you is if you go onto Medicaid, right? And that's before any changes that are coming about, right?
Right.
So when we start talking about Medicaid, that means you have no assets, which means you went through all your money before Medicaid actually steps in order to help pay for those long-term care costs. So, so when we start talking about foolproof, we're talking about you need to make sure that you're thinking about all these things that we just mentioned and then be able to put that into your plan, right? And the first thing I think everyone always thinks about is let's just talk about the financial standpoint, right? Everyone always hears about, well, you need to make sure that you diversify your portfolio. And it's more than just saying I'm doing international and I'm doing US. Right? You want to make sure you have a mix of asset classes like stocks and bonds, Annuities can play a part. ETFs. There might be some alternative investments out there. You might even think about putting, we talked about it before on our show. Life insurance is a good way. When you start putting your money into different products, forget about where it's invested right now, but in the different products, you're diversifying yourself, because we know certain things go up and certain things go down in asset classes. And you want to make sure that all your money's in something that's going up or it's all going down. And that's really what we're talking about. So it's kind of like, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but really what we're saying is don't put all your eggs in one type of investment.
Yeah, that's what you mean when you say that. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't put all your eggs in one 401k. Don't put all your finances in one area. Put them to work. Make sure there's a balance there. What's another thing we need to look at?
Well, I think everyone's always worried about what's going to happen when the market. How can I protect myself when the market goes down?
Yeah.
Right. And there's different ways to be able to do that. One of the things that we offer to our clients is what we call we have actually, it's called our buffered series, or basically what it is, it's a structured note that we go out, that we actually, Gradient goes out and negotiates for our clients. But basically it gives you downside protection with some type of market upside. So like, for this month, Tony, we have a buffered index that you put your money in there for 18 months. 100% protection. So your principal's protected, but you can make up to 14.3% during those 18 months, right? The other side of that is, that's great money if you have it in a CD or your bank, or maybe you're just very conservative and don't want to really be in the market. Making maybe potentially up to 14% is a good return, right?
Yeah.
The other side of it is you go, I want to be a little bit more risky. Well, we have another one for you where you can actually be uncapped on the upside of it. You're going to make whatever the Dow Jones or the S&P 500 does, for example. However, now you might have a 15% protection, and you keep your money in this particular product for 2 years. So during that 2 years, 2 years comes about. If the market's down 20%, you only lose 5. If the market is up maybe 15, 20%, then you might make that 20%. So it gives you the ability to make more than obviously, since you have, I would say, more risk, right? Because you only can lose 15% compared to my first example where it's 100% protected, you have a lower cap. But at the end of the day, really what we're talking about, it's a product to be able to be in the market with protection. And that's really what we're talking about.
You have either total or some downside protection.
That's correct.
Yeah. Depending on which one you get, you can get something with total downside protection, where, like you've talked about before, zero is your hero. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that and what downside protection you can get. That way you're using those strategies to guard against big drops, right?
That's exactly right. So the ones I just mentioned, you have to keep your money in there for 18 months or 24 months.
Sure.
We also have an ETF that you can get out of anytime that you want to. That's a buffered ETF.
Sure.
So you have some protection there. Then ultimately, if you want to be able to look more long-term, 10 years plus, then maybe a fixed indexed annuities are right for you. Just like you said there, where you can't lose any money. But at some point in time, you can turn it into a lifetime income stream, kind of like a pension in retirement.
Wow. Okay. So add that downside protection. What's the next thing on the list we need to look at to foolproof our retirement?
Well, obviously, you always want to rebalance, right? Regularly. And what I mean by that is whether the market goes up or down, if the market goes up, you're going to become naturally more risky, because all your stock portfolios have grown. So you want to be able to rebalance that to go back to whatever your risk level is. So you do want to be able to rebalance that. And the other part I think that a lot of people really have to look at is we're living longer. So you want to be able to, plan for how, everyone's longevity is a lot longer. I mean, that's life. So people are living longer. Now you're looking at 25, 30 years in retirement. So you need to be able to look for guaranteed incomes. You need to be diversified. You need to be able to look maybe some long-term options out there. So anything that's going to be able to help you make it, make your money last as long as you do.
Yeah.
That's very important, right?
Yeah, you got to look long-term. Longevity, we've talked about that before. There's longevity risk, and that's one way to minimize it. Make sure you're balanced properly and make sure you're planning for that. Plan to live longer, and if you don't, so be it. You'll have more money to leave behind to your loved ones. And if you do, you'll have enough money to live on, no problem, and won't have to worry about it, right?
I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, believe me, many of my clients, Tony, I mean, they'd like to spend, they'd like to pass away and they have $0 left.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is we don't know when that day is going to come.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just got to be able to plan to make sure you're going to have the money as long as you are there. But if something unexpectedly happens, you want to make sure it's set up the correct way to go it's going to go to your beneficiaries the best way possible. And that actually could be your spouse, could be your kids, it could be your grandkids, whoever you want to be able to give that to, right? And then I think the last thing that I think a lot of people have to think about is people need to spend more time thinking about taxes. I would think the majority of people think about taxes come February every year. They start getting your W-2s, your 1099s in there, and now you just got to put it all together and say, this is what I owe. But the question is could that tax bill that you're paying year in and year out be less, maybe not today, but less 5, 10, 15 years from now?
Yeah. How do you minimize your tax burden? Because every dollar saved in taxes is a dollar you have to grow in those accounts, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that you're investing the way that you should today to be able to save for benefit, for your tax benefits later. If you're retired, you got to look at ways that is going to give you more tax-free money as you age. The one thing I think people always forget about is, when you're married and you're in retirement, right? You pay a lower tax rate. When one spouse passes, your tax rate's about almost doubled because the tax bracket drops so much for a single individual.
Yeah.
And my point of that is if you don't plan right and you're the living spouse after your husband or wife passes away, then you're going to find out really on the tax how bad taxes are really going to be for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to look at, when you take out the money, a tax efficient withdrawal strategy is what you're talking about. And that's something you can help people with if they want to know how to do that in retirement to make sure they're not going to see big tax burdens when they take out their money to live on in retirement. Planning ahead helps, and having a plan in place to do that is important no matter what stage you're at, right?
That's exactly right. And
yeah,
here's what I would tell all of our listeners out there and viewers, and that is this: work with a financial advisor. Find your right financial advisor, whether it's with Safe Harbor or not. Find somebody that's basically is going to be able to provide you the expertise and advice to make sure that you're going to have a secure, reliable, and really a risk-resistant financial plan. So our job as an advisor is always to foolproof your plan. And, that we're really here to help and guide you to make sure that happens. Just remember, when you do schedule a complimentary or you do schedule a meeting with us, all meetings are complimentary. We can meet with you in Easton. We can meet with you in Dublin. We can meet with you via Zoom as well. Whatever's more convenient for you in order for you to kind of go through the process to find out, am I in a great position to retire the day I want to retire?
Right. Yeah, there you go. And that's the position we all want to be in. And in order to do that, you need a plan in place. You need to work with a professional like yourself. Again, that number is 614-760-0670. A no charge, no obligation consultation. Well, Cory, great show today.
Thanks, Tony. And for our listeners out there, you can also visit our website at diversifyingoh.com.
All right, and that does it for today's episode of Financially Fit Radio with our host, Cory Sickles.
Thank you for joining us for Financially Fit Radio. Don't head into retirement without a strategy that addresses both income and taxes. For more information, please contact Cory Sickles at Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors at 614-760-0670 or visit safeharboroh.com now. Join us again soon for another episode of Financially Fit Radio.
Investment advisory services are offered by Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors, LLC, and SEC Investment Advisor. Insurance products and services are offered through Safe Harbor Retirement Group, LLC, an affiliated company. Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Safe Harbor Retirement Group, LLC, are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any government agency. All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.